The US Space Force is building up a commercial reserve fleet for space. Trump is threatening defense giants over pay and delays. CACI is dropping $2.6 billion on a space intel player. And a dying Starlink satellite is tumbling towards Earth. Welcome back to Dragonfire, your briefing on the economics, geopolitics, and news around the space industry. The Space Force's Commercial Augmentation Space Reserve, or CASR, is moving out of the pilot phase and into scaling operations. Modeled on the Cold War-era Civil Reserve Air Fleet, the CASR creates a pool of commercial satellite capacity the Pentagon can surge in a crisis, starting with space domain awareness and eventually extending to SATCOM and launch. Space Systems Command already ran a pilot, with 4 unnamed SDA firms on 90-day contracts worth $1.1 million, feeding them threat intel and pulling them into war games to figure out how much commercial capacity is actually usable under stress. SSC wants up to 10 companies in the scaling phase, with a $7.5 million 2026 request, plus more complex work on issues like wartime damage compensation, and even denial of service orders, which would force companies to walk away from certain contracts or regions when the DoD needs extra capacity. So read between the lines. Washington is institutionalizing commercial space for its own reserves, but has not yet squared the circle on liability, prioritization, or contract sanctity for investors. Moving on to our next story. At Mar-a-Lago, Trump just unveiled the Trump-class battleship, massive laser-equipped combatants that would anchor an expanding Golden Fleet, similar to the Golden Dome for space, and use the moment to publicly lean on defense primes for moving too slowly and overcompensating executives. The first ship, the USS Defiant, is pitched as larger than current class destroyers, carrying nuclear-armed sea-launch missiles, AI systems, and direct energy weapons, with an eventual goal of 20 to 25 hulls. But the real signal is economic. Trump's planned meetings with the primes and is mulling over an executive order that would curb dividends, buybacks, and executive pay at the companies that are delayed on delivering their orders to the US government. He explicitly called out the F-35 production issues, framing a trade-off between $50 million a year executives and the Pentagon's need for faster, cheaper delivery of ships, ground-based systems, and space-based systems. For space, that's a warning shot. If this framework solidifies, late major space programs might not just lose fees, but also corporate financial freedom, which changes the risk calculus for primes, but also by extension their subs and acquisition targets. CACI is buying ARKA Group for $2.6 billion in cash, doubling down on space-based sensing, optical payloads, and intel software. ARKA, backed by Blackstone since 2019, brings space-qualified optical systems, telescopes, and electro-optical sensors, plus ground software that fuses raw radar and remote sensing data into intelligence products. CACI already builds optical communications terminals for the US government and holds a 10-year contract valued up to $450 million to support the US Space Force's Joint Navigation Warfare Center. By bringing ARKA in-house, CACI steps further up the stack towards vertically integrated space intel, hardware, links, and analytics, positioning itself for CASR-style SDA buys and Space Force IC demand for higher tempo optical and RF sensing. From a market perspective, this is another data point in the consolidation of niche sensing and optical shops into multi-domain primes that can bid for end-to-end architecture, not just payloads. Final story today is about a doomed Starlink satellite that was just captured on camera in orbit. After an anomaly on December 17 led to loss of communications and unplanned venting from its propulsion tank, one Starlink unit began tumbling and is now on a trajectory to re-enter and burn up within weeks, according to SpaceX. Vanter's Worldview 3 slewed off nadir to grab a 12cm resolution shot from 241 kilometers away, giving SpaceX a high-fidelity look at the vehicle about a day after the anomaly and confirming it was largely intact, with only a small number of debris objects released. Starlink now accounts for about 9,300 active satellites, or about 65% of all active satellites in orbit right now. So each failure is both routine and a live-fire test for space domain awareness, debris tracking, and commercial-to-commercial debris response. This one image captures the new normal: commercial operators imaging other commercial constellations in distress, feeding rapid battle damage assessment and risk modeling into both insurers and operators. Tie that back to CASR and CACI, ARKA, the same non-Earth imaging, data fusion, and SDA stacks that help SpaceX diagnose a single failed node are exactly what Space Force wants in reserve when a real conflict starts creating dozens of such anomalies in a day. So this week, the threads line up. Space Force is formalizing a commercial reserve fleet. The White House is threatening to discipline slow primes. CACI is buying itself deeper into optical sensing and SDA. And Starlink's mishap has showcased how crowded low Earth orbit has become. This has been the latest episode of Dragonfire from the Balerian Space Ventures team. Thank you for watching. If you have any stories you'd like to share with us, please do, and we'll cover it on the next episode.